All right, welcome everyone. Seeing where everybody's joining in the chat. Thank you for joining from Snowmageddon on the East Coast, the UK. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I think we have a lot of great content to cover today. Welcome everyone. Today we are going to challenge something many go-to-market leaders like myself quietly suspect, or maybe not so quietly. Your go-to-market strategy probably isn't the problem. In fact, most teams have never been clear on their market, their ICP, or their positioning, but strategy alone doesn't drive growth. Execution does. And we're seeing a widening execution gap. That's what we're really going to unpack today. So here is how we will be spending our time. I'll start with a quick framing and some data on why execution, not strategy, is now the primary growth constraint, and some of the recent research we have conducted with Harvard Business Review. Then we'll move into discussion with our amazing customer panelists to hear how this shows up in the real world, and we will leave time for live Q&A at the end. We are live, so I'm going to do my best to keep up with the chat and keep up with the Q&A. So in your webinar screen, you should see a tab on the right-hand side for live chat and then a Q&A tab. So if you do have a question for our panelists, type it into the Q&A tab and we'll keep an eye at the end. And if there's ones that we don't have time for, we will follow up afterwards. And yes, a recording will be available. So let's get into some quick introductions. My name's Hillary Terrell. I lead the product marketing organization here at LeanData. Today, I'm joined by two of our customers from Rebuy and Coursera. Both of them bring hands-on experience building and scaling go-to-market motions inside their organizations. So you're going to hear their firsthand perspective on everything that we will be talking about today. So before we get into the content, let me allow each of them to introduce yourselves. Let's hear about your title, a little bit about your company in case folks are familiar, and where your role, your team sits within the organization. Why don't we start with you, Nicole?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Super excited to be here this morning / afternoon / evening for everybody across the globe. As Hillary mentioned, my name is Nicole. I am the head of RevOps for a SaaS e-commerce software company called Rebuy Engine. And we sit on the Shopify ecosystem and help merchants with cross-sell, upsell, buy more, save more, subscribe and save, things along those lines. So I'm sure many of you have come across our app with online shopping. In my role at Rebuy, we sit directly under the CRO, which gives us a really unique perspective across the entire go-to-market org and support with finance, engineering, and product as well.
Awesome. Great to have you here. Jennifer?
Hey everyone, I am Jennifer Dimmick. My role is Senior Marketing Operations Business Partner at Coursera. Coursera, for those of you who don't know, is a global online learning platform. So we partner with top universities and companies from all over the world to offer online education. And my operations role at Coursera, we sit under the marketing umbrella, so ultimately reporting up to the CMO.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to share a bit of context setting before we get into our discussion, but lots to cover with our panelists. So stand by. So we won't bury the lead. You saw the title of this webinar today. What are we seeing as the go-to-market execution gap? First, let's define go-to-market strategy. For this discussion, we're going to define it by 3 revenue outcomes: new customer acquisition, expansion through cross-sell and upsell, and customer retention. All of these elements are, of course, widely recognized as critical to growth. Now, the data. So we recently partnered with Harvard Business Review, which I mentioned earlier, and surveyed over 500 go-to-market leaders about their strategy. P.S. This is forthcoming research, so you are all getting a firsthand sneak peek before this comes out next month. What we found is that 83% of those leaders say their strategy is important to growth. Not surprising. But only 38% say their strategy is actually effective. Why? Lots of reasons, and we're going to unpack those. I think one of them is, leaders are great at building growth tables on slides and plans. setting acquisition targets, retention goals, building out expansion plays and plans. But sometimes that strategy is handed down to our friends in RevOps as an almost finished product without ever stopping and asking, well, can we actually deliver on all of this? How do all the different pieces and parts fit together? We call this the execution gap. You have a unified strategy on paper, but then we see things break down downstream. The gap isn't a lack of vision, it's the inability to translate that vision into a coordinated action across people, across process and technology, and things that work across the entire customer journey. So again, execution, not strategy, is the real growth constraint. We also asked our respondents, well, what benefits, if any, has your organization achieved by improving your go-to-market execution? The number one reason that you see there at the top of the slide that our attendees cited was increased revenue as the number one outcome. Amazing. The benefits go beyond pure revenue. The leading organizations also cited improvements to overall buyer experience, shortening sales cycles, leading to higher conversion rates. In other words, execution just isn't operational hygiene, it is a growth engine. So this is an inflection point. Strategy is defining our direction. Our buyers are defining the complexity of our go-to-market motion, and execution is determining the results. And in a buying environment that is even more dynamic, even more multi-threaded, more non-linear than ever, execution quality matters more than ever. So teams know that execution is sometimes missing the mark. I think we've all felt it in our careers in the past. But many don't know why or where to start in terms of how to fix it. When asked the top priority on how to address it, leading organizations were clear: better coordination across marketing, sales, and customer teams. Not more tools, not more headcount, coordination, orchestration. That means execution fails when the tools, the teams, and the technology aren't designed to work together. And what are those failure points that we see? According to the respondents, in our own discussions with customers, execution typically breaks down into these four predictable ways. First, fragmented signals and data. The buyer context that we need lives everywhere in different systems and is difficult to pull together into a source of actionable truth. Second, siloed team execution. Marketing, sales, customer teams are acting independently, not intentionally though. And despite our best efforts, we're often disconnected from cross-functional partners in ways that ultimately have downstream revenue impact. Third, a lack of operational intelligence. Go-to-market plans exist, but sometimes execution still depends on manual triage. We might be relying on static rules in a dynamic buying environment. I think we all know AI is disrupting our go-to-market motion more than ever. And fourth, disconnected handoffs. Buyers are experiencing gaps between their interests and how they're engaging with you across their customer journey. Meetings, follow-ups, next steps are sometimes depending on manual coordination behind the scenes among our teams. So whether you are experiencing one of these things that you see here or many, you're not alone, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. In the chat, I'd love to hear from folks on the viewing side. What are you seeing as some of the failure points in your transition from strategy to go-to-market execution? I'm sure these are not the only ones. So if execution isn't the primary constraint, what is the path forward? The answer isn't more dashboards. It is a different model, and one that we believe is anchored into how buyers move through their journey, not necessarily how teams are structured internally. This is what we call intelligent go-to-market orchestration. What we've seen is that high-growth teams anchor their execution around how buyers move, not how sales or marketing teams are structured. And that to operate effectively, go-to-market teams need intelligence built into the execution itself. We'll talk a bit more about what intelligence means. Intelligent go-to-market orchestration connects every execution step: signal response, routing, follow-up, engagement, even meeting handoffs into one coordinated motion across the entire buyer journey. So whether your company is looking to acquire new customers, service and retain existing ones, or expand your business through upsell and cross-sell, orchestration isn't tied to a single technology or signal. It's connecting all of the signals across people and technology. It is a coordinated revenue execution model that aligns every team to the buyer journey. So what do we mean when we say intelligent execution? We think it comes down to 4 primary things. First, the buyer journey becomes that organizing principle. Second, signals are unified and there's a shared context. Teams can act from the same understanding of the buyer and the opportunity that's in play. We have signal-driven action and intelligence, not manual triage, which means the right response can happen automatically at the right moment. And finally, it's continuous evolution and feedback and improvement based on that feedback. Execution improves over time based on our outcomes. So this isn't more complexity, it is smarter coordination or orchestration. And when that improves, we see a lot of things happen, and we'll talk about some of the outcomes that our panelists have seen. We see better alignment across sales and marketing and customer success. We see an improved buyer experience and buyer engagement. We see improved efficiency and as a result, revenue performance gains. This is where orchestration really shifts from operational improvement to a strategic advantage. So all great in theory, right? Let's talk about how it actually shows up in the real world. I am gonna stop my slides so that we can see everyone's faces. So give me one sec. Awesome, I can see you there. Hello, panelists. A little bit of context setting, but this is the piece I'm most excited about, how this actually shows up in your organizations at Rebuy and Coursera. So you're both leaders in RevOps and marketing ops, and thank you again so much for your time here today. Let's go back even before the execution stage. To create that strategy, there's of course a lot of planning that is involved, cross-functional planning, leadership offsites. I'd love to hear from each of you how you typically see your role and your teams getting involved in the development of the strategy itself. What have you seen work, what hasn't worked, and then what are kind of those downstream impacts that you have seen? Jennifer, I'm gonna start with you if that's okay.
Yeah. So historically speaking, I have seen ops brought in too late, often way too late, certainly post-strategy discussions. And the result of coming into the conversation late and being asked to perform as more of a ticket taker rather than that integral voice and viewpoint in the strategic planning is that things break really as soon as they're built or launched. Typically, these breaking points could have been identified early on if ops had been a part of that conversation early enough to call those out. When this happens, the operations teams, in my experience, are typically asked to continue fixing or solving post-launch by really applying Band-Aid fixes, which we all know don't work great. What I have seen work really well is operations being an integral part of strategy. So actually our senior director rebranded our marketing operations team to marketing strategy and operations. And I've seen the success of this rebranding over the last year. I'm involved in a lot more conversations with executives or just more, I'd say early on in the process so that really we can say, you know, this won't work for this reason, or how about we do it this way? Or maybe there's actually already a conversation or a project ongoing that kind of supports whatever this new idea is. So it's essential that operations be brought in as soon as those conversations begin happening. We can't let silos dictate what or when operation hears of a new idea or request. And as I said, our voices need to be heard and valued in those strategic planning conversations for better strategy to execution, just a very harmonious flow.
Yeah, so we all need to add strategy to our team.
Yeah.
Nicole, how about you?
Yes, I am very similar to Jennifer. Historically, in most of my roles, and even prior to the last few months here at Rebuy, it's been very much the same, where we're looped in when it's time to build. Like they figured it all out, and now it's time to go, and it's being launched tomorrow, so we have to build it really fast. And what ends up happening is you put Band-Aid on Band-Aid on Band-Aid, and then eventually all the Band-Aids are just gonna come off because they don't do anything anymore to solve your issue. what's been working for us now, and I think we're living it in real time. We had a new CRO come on in November. And for those of you where that's happened, I know LeanData, you guys have experienced some leadership changes too.
Mm-hmm.
Happens, pretty much a lot of stuff is torn down and rebuilt, or there's new strategies or new ideas, more new leadership comes on. And what that means to me as a RevOps leader is that I need to be in the room like ASAP, even if it's a fly on the wall to just hear it. I need to be there. And I've been advocating for that big time. Throughout the past few months. I've even went as far as like being the guide for some of the conversations and just proactively scheduling the conversations with all the right people in the room as I'm hearing things. And that's really helped for us to start collaborating, picking out gaps, making sure that we're able to properly plan and avoid the having to do it all at once, which also happens during this type of transition as well.
Yeah, we have definitely gone through our own version of that here for sure. You both kind of mentioned having that seat at the table during strategy and planning. Are there any examples either of you can share where that has or hasn't happened and kind of the downstream impact?
Yes. So I have two that I can think of on the positive side. Luckily, our CRO has recognized the need for RevOps to be involved in like the strategy conversations, and we have a strategy leg on our team now. So we've advocated for that and talked about it, and that's really helped us. When we haven't been involved, I can think of like one perfect example of this. We decided we were going to change how we sell to new clients and really focus on contracts. Like that was the like focus. We need to get everybody on contracts. The month-to-month stinks with churn and retention. However, we were like brought in after they even decided to like do this, and no one told us that they were going to be doing this. So we had contracts coming to us and being put into Salesforce, and no one knew what to do with them. So my team just had to slap in some like fields and tell them to upload the contract on the account. And what that has led to now, like a year later, is how do we report on it? We have too many pipelines, too many record types, there's fields scattered. What's the handoff process?
Yeah.
Where if we were brought into that in the beginning when the decision was made, we could have designed a much better process instead of having to redesign what's currently in place.
Yeah, there's a comment in the chat that says, please be specific. I think that's a pretty good specific
Yes.
one. Jennifer, any ones that come to mind for you?
Yeah. Well, I've absolutely been where Nicole has been quite a few times. I was actually more so thinking, something's launched, anything, a campaign, a new process, we integrate a new tool, and reporting requirements or expectations were not discussed. Nicole just touched on this, but this one happens quite often. Suddenly ops is included to solve that for this lack of data or reporting. And it really becomes a fire drill, which is like never fun. It's because an executive is asking to understand the performance or the ROI, and we're just kind of scrambling to get it. I would say that's kind of the best case scenario, because on the flip side, you can actually find yourself in a situation where you don't know how to easily report on it, or you really don't have, everything built to report on it in the way you want to. And then this very, I'm going to use air quotes, simple request for a report is not in fact simple. It's a much bigger project. And again, all this could really be avoided if we had just been there from the get-go.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And then how many hours do we spend backfilling data to be able to actually do the reporting then?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that time could have been spent on growth opportunities for the business versus data opportunities. So I talked a little bit earlier about some of those key failure points that we see between strategy and execution, the siloed data, siloed teams, disconnected handoffs. I'm curious from your experiences, what you've seen as some of those biggest failure points from the point of strategy as execution rolls out. Nicole, I'll start with you on this one.
Yes. So I think there's two areas that I've seen that really stand out. So one, I'm sure many people will agree with this. Nowadays, our data is just all over the place. It's in Slack, it's in Salesforce, it's in BigQuery or Snowflake, it's in LeanData, it's in other tools, all over. Like we just have things being stored and going everywhere, and our teams want the insight and the signals and to have it all put together in one spot, which gets challenging when you're dealing with structured and unstructured data. Like how do you do that very well to make it usable? And the other piece that I've seen is getting alignment on business definition. So what is churn company-wide? For example, when what I've seen is that like our CEO, our COO, our VP of sales, our VP of success all have a different definition of churn, which then means their reporting is all very different with how they filter. And then when we're trying to talk about it and make a decision on what the data is showing, it's like, well, how'd you filter that? Well, I filtered it this way. Well, why'd you filter it that? Where'd you get this like data? And then we spend the phone call or the Zoom call talking about why the data is this way, rather than coming to those calls to like talk about what the data is showing and making the strategic recommendations based off of it.
Yeah, we have something similar here where we're leveraging AI tools. No surprise, we'll talk more about it. But the answer that you're going to get depends so much on the prompt that you're putting in, and so we're trying to get to the same answer sometimes, but the way in which we're querying the data can be different. Jennifer, I'll turn to you on this one too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to go perfectly into what my next point was, what you guys were talking about. I would say it's the single source of truth. So whether that's getting to it, designating it, or building it, like operations, I think is in a really good position to establish this resource, maintain it, like that one decided single source of truth, and then really drive it within the business so that everybody's referring to that one source of data so that we're all coming to the conclusions from that same original piece of data. The second one I've written down is that it's really like it's enablement. Operation teams are positioned well to work cross-functionally and collaboratively with the enablement teams to help drive success from strategy to execution. But without including enablement early on, similar to operations, it doesn't matter how brilliant the execution or strategy is, the intended users won't know how to use it or won't know what to do with it. And I mean, I've seen oftentimes like operations gets kind of stuck with enablement too, if you don't have that really strong alignment, or maybe you don't have those resources. Personally, I've seen a tremendous uptick in our execution projects that I'm, executing on since strengthening that relationship with our enablement partners, because it really allows for that handoff to be seamless and really just gives like the execution the, proper ammo it needs to actually like go do in the world beyond what we've built and set up internally.
Yeah, totally. Like that last mile is so critical to get it into the customer facing hands as well. Awesome. Thank you. So we use the term intelligent go-to-market orchestration. I use it in these slides. If you've seen these LeanData's materials anywhere, you're going to see that show up. I'd love to hear, like, how do you define it in your world when we think about that seamless coordination across teams, technology, process? How does it show up in your vernacular, in your worlds? Nicole, I'll start with you.
Yes, yeah. Definitely an important term to think about and apply to our day-to-day. And I think to us, like to our CRO, it's very important. With him coming on and even prior, like I've done a lot of research and discussions with my go-to-market leaders and stakeholders about the importance of taking into consideration everything that does happen pre-sales and during sales, but also for the post-sales process and everything that happens after new biz is closed won is mission critical for whatever's going to happen with your business long term. I think during the COVID boom, we were all focused on growth at all costs. Like that was the like mantra. We've seen it everywhere. SaaS exploded. But now with where we're at in this landscape, the post customer journey and what happens throughout their time with you is more important. Like yes, we need to get the new biz to continue the growth, but the revenue is going to come from your expansion, your cross sell, your upsell, retaining them over time, building the relationships. So when I think about the term revenue orchestration, it's everything that happens throughout that full funnel, and then what can we do to have that positive growing relationship with the customers that we do acquire to reduce churn and increase the NRR numbers for the business.
Yeah, no growth with a leaky bucket. Yeah, and I do think there is a misperception of like go to market very much with the acquisition phase, but it is adoption, retention, expansion, and that virtuous cycle. What about you, Jennifer, on the orchestration piece?
I'm just gonna like plus one to what Nicole said, but I do want to also I want to agree with how LeanData has kind of labeled it as GTM orchestration rather than GTM strategy. Because of what a cross-functional effort it is, operations is really the backbone, which is going to enable all the teams, all the tools needed in GTM to really function in harmony, if we're going to extend the metaphor there. And it's the operational setup that's really fueling like not just sales, but also marketing with that same intelligent information. I love the slide, that you shared initially. Like we have one very similar about just our GTM orchestration. And it's ops. It drives this process, this orchestration and as Nicole alluded to, it can really, if we're helping to drive it, it can really help to break down the silos, which are the barriers that kind of prevents that harmonious flow.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And it's not like LeanData does not equal orchestration. We are one piece of a broader, puzzle. Okay, I want to stay on this topic of intelligence, and that obviously is coming up in all sorts of contexts around go-to-market and AI specifically. I think what I am seeing, and I see it here at LeanData, is we're moving from this place of like siloed experiments. Marketing is trying something, ops is trying something, sales is trying something, and that's cool. But the board's like, awesome. What is going to scalably add to growth? I'm curious what you've seen in your organizations where AI is really entrenched or becoming entrenched in the go-to-market execution. Jennifer, let's start with you this time.
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly we're being consistently challenged to think about AI, more and more and how to harness its benefits. Specific examples that come to mind that I've been involved with most recently are really just about creating those efficiencies and workflows. So one specific example is like using AI to create personalized content at scale for our sellers and our SDRs. And then using AI too to make research and prospecting processes, or even like the enrichment of the data, much more efficient and less labor intensive, so that the sales reps and the SDRs can really do what they do best, which is, being on the phone or maybe being on a meeting, maybe even being in an in-person meeting. We just had a conversation with Clay, actually, interestingly enough, which really was talking about all this. I mean, there's so many tools that are doing it, but and then within our operations team too, we've seen success in using AI to consolidate like the large amounts of our own documentation, just for us to be able to digest it quicker and easier. And then also how AI can assist internally in helping like the people we support find that information rather than, hey, Jennifer, I can't find this document, or can you show me how to do something or help me troubleshoot? They can actually try and figure it out themselves with all of our very helpful documentation. And I will say, just before passing it off to Nicole, I mean, the caveat to all of this, again, is to have that single source of truth, be using the same prompts. I mean, AI is wonderful, but we don't want to make it harder for ourselves by just making a mess if we don't establish what that, baseline is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, totally agree with Jennifer. And I've seen the use cases on our side for that as well. I want to add a couple points. So first, like on the RevOps side, from a technical perspective, we've been using AI tools as like a Salesforce architect or a CRM architect, if you will, basically to kind of tell us like what's wrong, why are flows built bad, what can we do better. There's also a lot of great tooling out there for that, to take a peek into your metadata to help you troubleshoot, which has been huge for our team. What once may have taken a few hours to pop through a flow to figure out what's going on, now it takes like two whole minutes to figure out, which has been great. And that's just like a huge time saver, but it helps us to execute a lot faster on those technical builds by having that data so easily surfaced. The other lens that we've been using it for is for this like strategy and insights pillar that we're building out. There's really great tooling out there that can consolidate all of your data in one place. It can read through your structured and unstructured data and relate it together. And off of that, you can ask it questions, build scoring, build dashboards and reports automatically, do forecasting. And what that is allowing us to do is go into our leadership meetings and be able to guide those conversations because we already have the data surfaced rather than having to dig into the data points behind it. The last point to what you started with, Hillary, is that a lot of teams are experimenting with a lot of different things and doing things their own way. And are they pulling it from the right place? We don't know. So we've also talked about forming like a go-to-market AI committee on our side as like all these tools are being surfaced. I think there's a lot of noise with the AI tooling in the space too. So what's like actually good, what's going to be gone in a couple months. So we've all talked about getting together to talk about these things and share our ideas and what we're working on to kind of get things standardized and making sure that everybody's pulling that data and prompting the AI in a like good way that's going to pull back the right insights and data points.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of those committees or councils pop up at companies of every size. I'm going to quote what's put into the chat. I think it's spot on. AI is a force multiplier, but without strong data integrity, governance, and aligned metrics, we risk amplifying the noise instead of value. I think that's spot on. Thank you for the chat. I think RevOps is actually uniquely positioned, any operations role, to really help create those strategic guardrails for how it connects into the go-to-market execution. So an interesting year to come for sure on this front.
Actually, even the last comment of Clementine's in the chat there, like it's sometimes hard to enforce that understanding reality to C-levels. Like I think it's up to us to continuously challenge. Like just because it's AI doesn't mean we're just gonna get it, like we do need to challenge that and assess it properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have our CEO coming on like calls like you use AI wherever you can. Well, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Let's figure out what that actually means.
Yeah, and there's a lot of risk in it as well. It's not a one size fits all. We'll have a whole separate webinar on that topic. I want to shift a little bit to the topic of buying groups and the buyer's journey. We talked about how go-to-market execution has really evolved to be very anchored in that buyer's journey and thinking about buying groups. Not all companies are there in terms of the alignment. I'm curious for each of you how your go-to-market execution is or isn't tied to that buyer journey and what you've seen shift over time. Nicole, I'll start with you.
Yeah, we have definitely seen this evolve over the last year. I would say where it's very important that we recognize the different people who need to be involved at each stage of our funnel throughout acquisition, pre-sales, post-sales, like throughout the entire thing. And then it's even getting down to where for our different product lines, there are different decision makers and key stakeholders who need to be involved in those products. Like we have one product specific to finance, or like a dev team who runs an e-commerce site probably wouldn't care about this product, but a finance team would be like, yes, it's a no-brainer. So if we don't have the right people involved throughout those conversations, it matters for the success of the opportunity and the success of the relationship that we build with them. So now we have this whole project kicked off on like, what does this mean? Like, do we move to a contact-centric motion for market?
Mhm.
How do we structure that? When do we pull in people? How do we identify them? And I think it's really important for everybody to take that into consideration because it does matter. But definitely challenging to build. Hence why RevOps really needs to be involved from the beginning of these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. There's qualified leads, and now there's qualified buying groups. And how do you build that in this way? How about on your side, Jennifer?
I mean, yeah, again, +1, Nicole, very aligned, but the people personas and their requirements differ at each stage of the buying journey. And we really need to be able to identify them correctly and then support them based on their very unique requirements. And this does challenge us to be agile so that I'd say more agile than we were in the past so that the relevant and impactful responses can be delivered. I mean, Nicole talked a lot about the different buying groups and the people, but we've had recent conversations about the messaging and what does that look like based on who that different person is as they progress through the funnel or like where they are in the buying journey. And as there's more varieties of people involved in that buyer journey, we also need varieties of messaging, which is going to resonate and even get the right seller to them. It's just complexity on top of complexity.
Yeah, as a product marketer, I understand that flavor. There's personas, there's different industries. There are so many different shapes that can take. Heads up to our attendees. I have 2 more questions for our panelists, and I'm keeping an eye on chat, so you still have time to get some in if there's anything you would like to ask of Nicole and Jennifer. While everyone is thinking about their questions, I'm curious for each of you, what other trends that maybe we haven't talked about, it doesn't have to be AI, there's other things that are impacting your go-to-market strategy and execution in 2026 and even beyond. If it's okay, I'll start with you, Jennifer, on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a bit of a guessing game at this point. But I do think essentially we'll see some stronger execution of what we've kind of been either experimenting with or piloting or even just like evaluating when it comes to tools. So that includes obviously signal-based selling. I mean, that's huge. We're definitely no longer doing like spray and pray. Personalized outreach, as I've mentioned. So agentic workflows, like I said, a tool like Clay, it's an interesting player for like using AI to do the researching and then writing the personalized messaging. It brings really all the tools that we ask, like our sales team, for instance, to use, and it just presents them with exactly what they need to be doing. So making processes more efficient and hopefully bringing in more revenue for the company. And then lastly, and I hope this isn't just wishful thinking, but reducing tech debt. So much of our tech stack has significant overlap now just because they're all making such considerable strides and employing AI, and a lot of them do what each other does. So it's, can we get rid of a tech here so that ops isn't supporting, or we're confusing our sellers who are asking to use that tool. It definitely costs a lot of money. It definitely creates a lot of friction. So hoping to reduce that. And then I will just say too, I mean, I think it's important as we start seeing what these trends are, either, at Coursera specifically or just trends for go-to-market in 2026. I think operations leaders need to modulate and qualify some of these trends, as we can't execute on everything at once, and trends are flashy and exciting and everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon, but we need to kind of go back to basics, kind of be mindful of what our priorities are and what will be most impactful for the business.
Yeah, modulate. I like that word. Nicole, I'll pass to you. What's ahead for 2020?
Yeah. So something that I've been seeing and also experiencing in real life is RevOps is becoming a disruptor to the business, but in the best way possible. I think with all the tooling that we have, our unique perspective of seeing everything across the full motion, like we can, if and when we are brought into the room earlier, we can challenge where it's needed, play the devil's advocate. Maybe we don't agree with the devil advocate approach, but it's a good thought to think about. And then how I'm approaching this is like, just because it's the status quo in the business right now does not mean it has to stay that way. So with all this AI tooling coming out and different ways to surface the insights faster, we're able to bring these things to the leadership team when it matters, rather than spending all the time doing the like digging, and then the time has passed and it doesn't matter anymore. So it's been interesting to watch this happen and like be a part of those conversations where we are disrupting this, like what the current way is to build better and more efficient processes.
Yeah, I love that. Efficiency and growth. All right, I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat. So we'll cover some of those. Someone mentioned time to insight by leveraging forecasting data through an AI tool. Either of you okay to jump in on that one?
Yes. So we are building this out now. Happy to discuss the like tooling and like what it is offline more. But what we're trying to do is be able to have different forecasts built quickly using all of our data sources in one place that may not have been able to be combined before. So like when I'm thinking about this and approaching it is like a perfect example. Churn forecasting. Do we actually know like what might churn in the next 60 days and why? And I think especially with churn, that's a big focus for us. Like a major gap is like what are all those close loss reasons that happen that aren't logged in the CRM? And we see those data points come across in Slack, in emails, in LinkedIn messages and more. And now we're able to grab that data and put it into tooling to like read through it, call transcripts too. Maybe they're populating in the CRM all the time. And we're able to like look at that and link it to accounts that are coming up for renewal. And if there's a negative sentiment that the AI detects, it can tell us that that's a churn risk and it may churn in the next 60 days. Previously, we would have maybe seen that account come up for renewal, and we'd have to dig into the data and find all the things and pull it together to be able to find that. But now we can proactively figure it out much more quickly than before. And luckily, all the AI tooling has all the different models built in based on your business and your like seasonality baked in to our business. So that's like mission critical. And we're able to do that now faster and never done it before.
Yeah, I see that here also. There's so many signals outside of what's living in the CRM that if you can, extract them into a single place, churn risk is a great example. Jennifer, anything you want to add on this piece? It's okay to +1 too.
Yeah, very much +1. I'll let Nicole stand alone on this one.
Awesome. There is a question. Anything that you all have seen in terms of how procurement has changed when thinking about AI tools versus SaaS? I don't know, Jennifer, on the Clay side, anything different on the procurement process you've seen?
We will find out. We are far from, I wouldn't say far. We do tend to get procurement involved pretty quickly, but nothing I can really think of that stands out now. But I do anticipate even more delays and complexities with AI. And so again, stay tuned if we proceed with Clay, but I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah. Anything on your side, Nicole?
I do think the AI tooling tends to get a little bit more vetted than my prior experience with like SaaS tooling, because I think there's still like a lot of unsureness, if that's the like right word of like, is it telling us the right thing? Is it what this person is using and they're an expert at it, so they want it? Or like there's a lot of competition and noise and things that overlap, and where does it all go? And people get confused in of what things we're trying to accomplish. So I think on my side, like, it's been really mission critical to like keep the SaaS conversations like a CSP, for example, versus like our forecasting AI tool, like separate, because different things to take into consideration with each. And then I've been very organized on like time to value, what the use cases are, what we expect it to impact.
Yeah.
But I think like there's a lot more like questioning on the AI tools is the value for the cost of it.
Yeah. And I think you see kind of like shadow procurement or going around procurement in cases when it is that individual use case, which is also a little frightening. Okay, I'm going to take this last question I see in the chat. I really like it. Any recommendations on helping RevOps get a seat at the table sooner for quarterly or annual planning? Nicole, you want to start on that one?
Yes. Ask a lot, bring it up all the time. Since I report into the CRO, I think I'm in a great position to like constantly ask him all the time. I bring up things that I know are coming. And I say, can I please be added? Or maybe like I check into like meetings coming up and ask to be added. I don't think we're being like a pest or annoying. I think we should be advocating for us to be there because we do see the like full business. It can be intimidating, especially if you don't report to the CRO, or maybe you do and you're not like comfortable talking to them. But having that voice and the confidence to like do it is also what will set you apart in the business, and it's very important. And I also make sure that my team is like with me on some of these calls because their voices and what they see in the trenches are just as important as my perspective too.
Yeah, I love that. What recommendations would you give, Jennifer?
I agree with what Nicole said about like ask, you're not going to get it unless you ask. Obviously, if you're not kind of positioned as Nicole is, reporting directly into the CRO, I think getting your manager support too. I mean, that could help facilitate some of those. Can I be in this meeting? The thing is, I mean, I've been experiencing this the past year. Like it is uncomfortable to kind of insist or I'm going to say fight your way in, even though most people are glad to have you there, even if it's just, you're a fly on the wall. But it can feel uncomfortable and you kind of just got to advocate for yourself and again, align with your managers so that they kind of help to advocate for you. I think before long, as an ops person, your value will be very it will be seen, it will be appreciated because by you being in those conversations earlier, you are able to flag why, this brilliant idea maybe is going to have a hitch here or something needs to be reconfigured. I think offering to facilitate conversations or being really proactive with setting them up, it does mean sometimes you're taking on a little bit more work, but I mean, that's the benefit is you're in that room and you're part of that conversation and you can begin to weigh in before long. Yes, that would be my advice and my experience over the past year personally.
Yeah, like you're directly tied to business outcomes. Show those outcomes, demonstrate them, and don't be afraid to. Awesome. All right, I'm going to ask my last official question. If you could give one piece of advice, a little bit similar to the previous question, but it can be broader than getting a seat at the table. Piece of advice to go-to-market leaders trying to improve their execution this year, what would it be? Nicole, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So we definitely covered like advocate, make sure that you can be there if you can. But I think one thing that operations folks in general have to continue doing is showing the business the value that we bring. And I think the folks that are in the go-to-market leadership positions are positioned to do that with all the things that we talked about today during this conversation and all the work that we're doing to like move out of just being seen as a ticket taker, a CRM person. That's not what we are anymore. But by having your voice, being the disruptor, surfacing the things to the leadership team, all of that is what's going to help us like have that voice, be in the room, show our value, and we can't be afraid to do it. This is also like new to me too. Like my confidence in this space has been really important to like growing as a ops professional and as a leader. got tongue tied there. But like we'll continue to do that and work on it and grow over the next year for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love the disruptor term that you've used as well. Jennifer, what piece of advice would you give?
I mean, I challenge. So challenge number one is the old way or the old views of operations being strictly behind the scenes. I think a lot of people still think of us in that way, and that really is not the way forward. I don't think ownership and visibility are really crucial for us. I also would always challenge the status quo. So I mean, we there's a refrain here. I'm sure it's not just at Coursera, but well, that's the way we've always done it. And it's like, well, maybe let's challenge that. Maybe that wasn't the best way forward. And so just kind of always challenging that. And then lastly, just kind of circling back to AI, tempering ourselves with the pull of everything AI with a back to basics mentality. Like, yes, let's use AI, but let's also just temper our excitement in using everything AI, which we've already kind of touched on.
Yeah. And intelligence doesn't just have to mean leveraging AI. All right, let me see if I can get back into slide mode, and I will close us out. All right. So grateful for both of your insights in this conversation. Really, really appreciate it. We even covered stuff not covered in our prep calls. It was great. So I'll just kind of close us out by reiterating, some of the new elements of the go-to-market execution formula. I think Nicole, Jennifer, you highlighted things in addition to this, but really grounding in that coordination, that orchestration across the go-to-market motion, across go-to-market teams, anchoring in the buying journey, and embedding intelligence everywhere. And that intelligence can take different forms. It doesn't mean edge cases of AI, but how do we really automate those core motions of our go-to-market process? I will put this slide up for a second. I added all of our LinkedIn handles. All happy to connect with anyone who is on here. If there was a question you didn't get to ask or have specific advice you'd love to get from any of our panelists, I thought you all had great words of wisdom for our attendees here today. So great conversation. I appreciate everyone sticking with us through this time here today. Enjoy the rest of your days and hopefully see you at a future RevOps event or LeanData event. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks.